Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another weekend virtual cafe. This is a chance for us today to have a discussion around a topic, in this case, which is all about tracking our business metrics. And I'm really excited to get into this. I don't know that we've really spent time on this, which I think is actually a pivotal thing for us to talk about, because if we want to improve, we have to start measuring, right? And so that's what today is about. So I welcome anyone to participate on the call today. And if you want to, you can put your reaction button, you can hit your reaction button, or you can actually raise your hand as well. It's going to be a wonderfully good sized group today that we'll be able to have folks all participate if they want to. Just as we're getting started, I want to introduce myself. Hello, I know there's some new folks on the call. My name's Carrie Ramsey, and I am the project manager for the We Can project, which is led by Queen's University. And it is just an honor and a privilege. I was just mentioning I had erroneously booked this during my vacation time. And I was like, I don't even care. I'm showing up here today because I love these people and I love what I do. So here I am. I hope you're also having a wonderful August and enjoying a little bit of downtime now and then. Why don't you take a moment in the Zoom chat to connect with each other? Just let us know, where are you connecting from, maybe geographically? What's your business? If you want to put a link to your business, by all means, that might be a website or a LinkedIn link or your Instagram. I don't know. Just go ahead, take a moment. We are so glad that you're here. And as I said, we're expecting a few others as well. While you're doing that, I will take a moment to acknowledge that Queen's University is situated on the unceded territory of the Huron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. And today, of course, we're talking about business metrics. And I was thinking about this in the context of Indigenous philosophy today, because, of course, Indigenous people have had businesses and been running businesses since time immemorial here on Turtle Island. And their KPIs, or their key performance indicators, are somewhat different than mainstream business. Obviously, sustainability, putting planet and people before profit would be examples. And so I just thought that that flowed also into our discussion today. Was we think about, what are our key performance indicators? What are the metrics that define our success, and how do we track them? So I'm excited to get into this topic with you all today. Thanks for those who are introducing themselves in the Zoom chat. If you are just arriving and you haven't yet said hello in the Zoom chat, go ahead and let us know where you're connecting from, what your business is, and let's dive right in. Okay, so I've got a little bit of a poll. It's not going to be me talking, by the way, the whole time, but I do want to kick this off with a little poll to find out who's in the room. And so this is just a quick question. Hopefully, Tammy, you want to give me a thumbs up if you can see that on your screen? Thank you. So go ahead and answer that question. What phase of business are you in? And so the reason I'm asking this question is that depending on your phase of business, you might be tracking different metrics. And so we might have someone who's been in business for 10 years who is tracking something that you're like, oh my gosh, should I be tracking that? But you just started your business. So I want to make sure that you realize that there's going to be different responses, and that's okay. We might be in different phases. So I think that most of you have now, I'll just leave a moment if anyone else wants to answer that poll. A couple of you I know might be driving or might be multitasking. Okay, I'm going to end that poll for time's sake, but let's take a look, and I'm going to share the results. So we have most of you are more than five, well, about half of you are more than 5 years in business, and we have some in the growth and early stage as well. All right, so we have the gamut that's represented here today, which is normal. So again, as I said, as we are talking today, just keep in mind that your phase of business might have different metrics that need to be tracked. Okay, so let's open up the floor. Enough of me. Anyone that wants to put their hand up and answer this first question I have, which is, what metrics are you tracking? That's the kind of the first thing that we want to be thinking about. Some folks might be like, I'm not tracking anything. I'm just going to write down what other people are tracking, which is fine. Again, keep it in mind that it should be in context of your phase of business. So who would like to kick it off? You can, Erica, let's go ahead and have you start. And then others, you can certainly put up your action button as you see fit. Over to you, Erica.
Hey, so I've been thinking about this ever since I signed up for this virtual cafe, because I'm 10 years plus in business, and the only KPI that I track is revenue. And I'm really excited to learn what other things there are out there to be tracking.
Excellent. Okay, excellent. I love this because this is going to allow us to even refine sometimes what we're doing as well. Are there other things that would be beneficial? By the way, I'm not purporting to have all the answers. I'll have some suggestions, but it's your peers, I hope, that are going to weigh in. All right, so who else? What are you tracking? And it's okay if you just want to say, as Erica just said, I'm just tracking one thing. So Panita says customers. So I want to, yeah, check the Zoom. So Panita, I don't know if you want to add to that. Is that customer satisfaction? Is that like the number of customers? Just curious on that if you want to add something there. And if anybody else wants to put their hand up, we'll go to you next. Who wants to be bold? Martha, go ahead. And then Claire after that.
Yeah, I actually I feel like I track too much. I have so many different streams of revenue, so I'm trying to kind of keep track of like where I'm extending my energy. So I have consignment artists, so I track how much I'm selling for my art. It's not there's no investment really for me other than taking up space. So that's pretty much easy profit. I track my leads and see how many of those lead into a membership. I track obviously membership and retention. And then I track through my cafe what I'm selling and what I'm not selling. So yeah, I
I
feel
love
like
that.
I'm tracking a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But
And
I haven't been in business long enough to really like figure out patterns. So because like with the cafe part, like I can waste product, right? And but it's so inconsistent and everyone
Mhm.
keeps telling me it takes 2 years to really see the patterns, but
I
yeah.
was just thinking of you yesterday, Martha, and thinking you are coming up on your 1 year anniversary. And Martha was in our mastermind this year. And Martha, can I just say how much I'm so excited where you are right now compared to last year, which was right?
Yeah.
She opened Pedalworks Cafe and Studio, of course, in Kingston. And so that the point of what you're tracking right now, I think, is brilliant because then next year you're going to have a comparator, right? And that's one of the reasons we track is so that next year, Martha and others will know, okay, what did I do last June? What did I do last September? And suddenly we're able to compare and say, oh, that's interesting. I went down here, but up here. What? And then to really allow the data to drive our action, right? The data needs to inform us. So again, let's look at some of these indicators and say, okay, what story is the data telling me about my business right now, right? And I'm a storyteller, you know that about me, some of you. I always think of things in stories. What story is this data telling me? So if for those that don't like numbers, think of it as a story. Martha, thanks for sharing that. And I think those are great keep KPIs for your first year in business that will hold you in good stead. Claire, over to you. You had your hand up as well.
Martha's definitely covered some of what I was going to share in her long list. I using MailChimp for the last 5 years, and the one thing that I do check is just who is engaging with
Yes.
what kind of posts, and then if that translates to actual bookings. And that's the frustrating part is that, there could be people that are engaging every single month or multiple times a month, but then I have no idea how to turn that into actual revenue. But that
Okay.
is one thing that it's interesting to me because it feels like it gives me a sense of who my core audience is, if that makes sense.
I think
And
that's
then
huge.
also repeats. So repeat customers that are coming back for experiences with me more than once and sort of putting them in a different category.
Absolutely. Okay, I love so much about that. I hope some of you are writing some of that down. So she's using MailChimp in this case. And so that's going to be a question in a moment, of course, is how are you tracking, right? Let's find out some tools we're using. And so it's you're able then to say, okay, this is a lead, but maybe not converted to a sale yet. Could I send that person a little email to say, oh, to ask a question or to follow up? That allows us to take some action. And then what you said was the repeated customers. I think Martha also alluded to that. So, we all know that it's easier to keep a client or a customer and serve them more deeply than even go find a new customer, right? It's just if we can have a customer path and journey that gives them different points of ways to work with us and we can earn revenue multiple ways. It's just a really smart business move. So that allows us to serve them deeper. And again, we'll look at the lifetime value of that customer, which I think is awesome. Okay, Cheyenne, go ahead. Give us some of the nitty-gritty what you're working on. What are some of the things you're tracking?
I have some of the overall business stuff, revenue, conversion rates for sales calls and proposals sent out. But from a marketing standpoint, that's a big focus for me as a marketer. So I track a lot of my audience growth. That's a big one. Open rates on emails, engagement rates on socials, webinar attendance, that type of stuff. I do a lot of audience growth tracking.
Yeah, and the conversion rate, especially for you, and I know in the service industry, product sales, it might also apply if you're doing online. But I think that that's key as well. Like, because then you can say, okay, that's interesting. I put this much money into promoting this. I got this many people, therefore I know my cost per contact, or, I know what it costs me to get 10 people into this program because I'm able to track that conversion. And what's interesting also that I'm not hearing right now, and I want to flag this, especially a lot of early people in businesses, we track vanity metrics. Does anybody know what I mean by vanity metrics? Go ahead and let us know. Okay, what would that be? Cheyenne.
Things that will not get you any actual results. They
Such
think
as?
children, they stroke our egos, but they're not tied to a business goal.
Such as, do you have an example?
Audience can be followers. If they're not the right followers and they're not intentionally cultivated and you don't have a content strategy, if your friends and family are following you or bots are following you, those are vanity metrics. They
Yes.
have to tie down to a goal and lead into a pipeline.
Yeah. So many of us in the early stages, especially, but honestly, others can be guilty of it, is they think that the metrics are how many Instagram followers do I have? Whereas that is absolutely a vanity metric. The more Instagram followers you have does not mean your sales are going up. So I'm glad I have not heard, like I've heard audience growth, yes, but to me, it's like that paid audience growth, right? It's the people who are actually converting into sales and leads. So I want to encourage anyone that might be stuck in that bubble of, okay, I'm spending half my day growing my Facebook following. That's a vanity metric, right? And again, it's very visible. Here's the reason why it's vanity, because other people can see how many are following us on Facebook. And we know for a fact there are multi-million-dollar businesses out there with, less than 1,000 followers, less than 500. Like it's just not, it doesn't equate, especially God forbid when you're buying your followers, it just makes no sense. So anyways, I wanted to flag vanity metrics as something that sometimes we get sucked into. And I love to hear that that's not what's happening. Okay. So anyone else who wants to talk about what you're tracking, and then we're going to segue into what Joanne is indicating in the Zoom chat, which is how are you tracking it? Does anybody want to tell us what else are you tracking? It's okay if it's been something someone else has said, because sometimes, people need to hear, oh, 3 or 4 or 5 people are tracking that thing. Interesting. Go ahead, Joanne.
Well, for me, that's my issue. I don't track. And so I really need to get better at that. And so I'm looking for some inspiration here on this cafe chat. So, and I'm 5 years over. So this is not good.
The truth is you're not alone. Like, let's just put that, the fact that you guys showed up for this call is remarkable. You're way ahead of the folks that didn't show up, right? Because you're going to get some metrics here. And it could be just, now it's the time. Now it's the right time for you to be focusing. And so, better now than never. So let's look at that. I think it's awesome. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Deanne, go ahead.
Hi, morning, everyone. I'm fairly new to the group, so I'll do a quick introduction. I'm Deanne. I'm based in Kingston, Ontario, and we are 3+ years into a blockchain-enabled sensitive research data sharing platform. Our target audience is higher education or institutions and colleges. What am I tracking? My business partner, he's the technical component, I am not, is revenue. And over the past 3+ years, we are just at that inflection point of revenue. So that is all hands down and harvesting clients and going out to those higher education institutions. So I am keen to hear, I spot on about the vanity. Yes, we've got the social media. I don't spend a lot of time with it. It is important to have it, but I don't want to be caught in that hole, that black hole of putting all my effort into that social media when I know I need to be doing these others, and again, harvesting clients as well.
Yeah. Spending our time on what is moving that needle, in fact. And yeah, visibility is important. I think that we all, in most cases, need to be visible on whichever platform you choose, whether it's LinkedIn, right? Maybe Instagram's not the right one, but that's a whole other thing that we could talk about. But yeah, I love that. And so I want to flag just something before we go to Kauru, what Deanne mentioned, and a couple of you mentioned, which was revenue, which is important. I just wonder how many of you are also tracking profit, right? Because there's revenue and then there's profit. And so sometimes, again, we can suddenly realize that one or two of the things we're doing are just not profitable. And those are products we can get rid of over time when we track, right? And we can say, what is my profit margin? Oh, look, people really want that, but I'm not making a profit on it. And that's where we need to say, ooh, that might not be the right thing for me in my business. So I just want to flag that there's a difference between the two. Kauru and then Tammy, over to you, Kauru, first.
Yeah, okay. I'm doing business for almost 18 years, but I haven't tracked anything but only revenue and profit. So if it's green, yay, that's it. And I have been doing 18 years, so don't feel bad, people. Joanne, you said you haven't done anything, but it's okay. It's okay. But I started to track, my newsletter subscribers.
Yes.
Yeah, because it works for me. Every time I write newsletter, people respond. So it works for me. So I wanted to grow my newsletter
I love that.
subscribers. Yeah.
And I don't think that newsletter metrics are vanity metrics, because I think that when Cheyenne mentioned audience before, newsletters are more real. Like they have opted in. They want to hear from you. They will unsubscribe if they no longer want to hear. So those to me are warm leads, right? If we're looking at that lead machine, those are warm leads. Where the Instagram, people don't go on Instagram to buy, right, necessarily, or Facebook. So I love that you're tracking those. And also you mentioned, because you want to grow. And again, if we're not tracking it, how do we know if we're growing it, right? So we know that generally if we have an audience, quote unquote, an audience, whether that's newsletter, social media, 2 to 2.5% of that audience will convert to buying something, right? That's an incredibly low, but that's just the average globally, not just for women, not just for Canada. Globally, it's about 2%. So there is an incentive to grow that email list, right? If we have 1,000 people, and we have 5 spots in a program, it's just, we're going to be more apt to fill those spots with a larger. So there's reasons to grow our audience for sure. I think that's brilliant. I think that's great. Tammy, over to you.
So I do track revenue, not profit. And it's, like in my handy woman business, because it's which services do I want to continue providing, or what, I don't really like doing this service. How much of my revenue is actually taking up that portion? What I wasn't doing, and I wanted to do, and it took me 3.5, 4 years to actually do it, was to do profit. Now, for me, it's a little bit harder providing a service where I have to, like my gas, materials I have to buy, the if a tool I have to get, like it seems so overwhelming. And I finally reached out to my bookkeeper, and it's like, can we do this? It's like, well, if you get the next level of QuickBooks Online, which I've been using all along, absolutely I can do it. I can actually go back and figure out, was I actually making a profit in that? So it's, starting off with baby steps. Yeah, I was kind of tracking this through on a vague line, and now it's exciting going deeper into it. But as I'm starting to build the service only business, I have no idea what to track or how to track it. So I find this incredibly helpful. So thank you for providing it.
Yeah. And then in that case, it's great. That's where if you have a community like this one, or you're in masterminds, etc., you can poll the people that you are talking to. There's lots of service people on this call because you're right, a product or business, let's say, or even the service business you're running is different than an online business, let's say, for sure. Okay. So I love it. Let's go now. And there was something I was going to say, Tammy, that you said that was profound, but people go back to the recording, watch it. I forget. It'll come back to me. Okay. So last call for what are you tracking? And then I want to head into how are we tracking it? Because I think that's just as important. Claire, go ahead.
Happiness.
Happiness,
The
tracking happiness.
Yes, of myself and of the people that I'm engaging with, and I'm putting that at a much higher level of importance going forward than I have in the past.
And let's just say that, I mean, we've had this discussion before. At one point, it was how do you define success? Really, once you know how you define success, then those metrics come into play, right? We have to be aligned with our values. And I think that that's brilliant that Claire just said that, because what if one of your KPIs is your happiness index? And maybe you track that with, I don't know, Claire, how do you track that? Is that a journaling thing? Do you keep track of that? If you actually track your happiness, how do you track happiness?
It is a lot of self-reflection, but it's also sitting down after a retreat or a workshop or an event or something new that I'm offering and going, okay, am I depleted? How am I feeling? Is this something that I can't wait to do again? Did that take too much out of me? And, similar to what Tammy said, noticing what it is you want to do again and again, versus the things that, maybe there was a slightly higher profit, but holy crap, it took you 2 days to recover.
Yeah.
Right. And so those are the sorts of things that I'm really watching. Life is full and I can't afford to feel that depleted. So even if it is a community event that I want to volunteer for, is it going to fill my cup and lead to leads and all of those other things? So yeah, that's kind of how I do it.
You mentioned the happiness index, but I'm going to also flag you were talking about wellness. So personal wellness, does it take you 2 days to recover from the thing you're selling? Is it physically demanding that now you're sick? Like, those are indicators that we determine. This is why we open businesses, so we could be our own boss. We determine things. So sometimes we're a harder boss than a boss that we might be working for. So we have freedom.
Totally.
Let's create the success metrics. Okay, Tammy, over to you next.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up quickly on what Claire said. Like, she banged right on the nail with that. And this is also to answer what Punita asked about what you use. So I do track my revenue and what service I provide brings in the most revenue. And a third of my revenue is actually yard care services. I hate it now. I absolutely hate. Every time I'm doing someone's yard, I feel like, God, when is this over? And you know what? Last Friday, I dropped every single yard care client because it just, even though it's a third of my income and I'm scared AF is like, okay, how am I going to make up this income? It's not physically, emotionally, mentally worth it. So yes, I keep track of the revenue on paper and QuickBooks charts and whatnot, but it's the other more important part is what it does for me, how much it takes out physically, emotionally, psychologically.
And there's that self-awareness piece that, Tammy, I know you are very good at. It's the self-awareness piece of not just like hit the pillow, go to bed, but as Claire said too, reflecting. We need to leave some time in our business for that. Sometimes we're just go, 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 and fear is driving us rather than vision. Like we're running from something rather than towards something. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that and being honest about that, for sure. Karu, over to you. You've got people subscribing for your newsletter right in the Zoom chat, I want to point out.
Oh, yay!
You can get their emails later.
Yay! I just wanted to show, this is my happiness project. This is my book. I write everything that makes me happy. Yeah, and then I want to try something when I hear something about book and then everything. So I write, I don't know how to track, but I write down everything about my happiness.
That is a form of tracking. It doesn't have to be super high tech. A journal to me is tracking awareness. Yeah. And I mean, we all need to take a note from that because Kara's been successfully in business over 18 years now. If you're not going to take the time to do this happiness thing in whatever form it takes, maybe you're not going to be lasting the 18 years. And I listen to people when I hear they've been in business over 18 years. And you're always so self-effacing, Kara, which is it's so sweet. But the truth is you're a rock star. Like you absolutely are. Amazing. Okay. So let's shift. Let's go into, yes, she is. She's an inspiration. How are we tracking? So we've heard now a few things, self-reflection. We've heard MailChimp. We've heard journals. And there might have been some others. Let's go ahead and start sharing. What are some ways that you track whichever metric it is that you have in mind that you're tracking? And I'll try to keep an eye. Erica, go ahead.
Hey, thank you. So I have like going back to my revenue goal. So I have a goal for the year, what I need to pay all the bills, pay all the taxes, support the family. And what I really like to do is I draw a thermometer and break it out into $10,000 increments, and I color it in every time I hit one of those milestones, and it is so satisfying. I also use Excel, but I have my I'm looking at it right now, and
So
I
it's
know where I
on your
am.
wall because I see you
It's on
looking
my
at.
wall. Yeah,
I love that. It's a visual indicator.
so
And so
motivating.
how often, this is going to be a poll question in a minute, but how often are you updating that?
For me, it's as soon as I hit the next $10,000 chunk,
Okay.
color it right in.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to flag something there, which you talked about goal setting, right? And I think goal setting starts anytime. We don't need to wait for January, but hey, if you need a start of a year, guess what? September is the unofficial new year, and that's literally 2 weeks away. I want some of you to set some goals. And so here's what, when we talk or I coach or we talk in our masterminds, it's like, what's your month? I like monthly goals. So what's your monthly that you need to like pay your bills, to do all the things? And let me just use that round number of 10,000. Maybe that's 10,000. So if you need 10,000, like for all the things, then, okay, so let's break that down. What should I be making? Like, what do I need to be bringing in? How many of that product? How many of that service? I love breaking down into micro goals. And so obviously over a year, that's 120,000. It might not all be profit. And that's why I think it's important to do the revenue versus profit, but figuring out what is that monthly goal and then tracking, just like Erica's doing, I think is brilliant. Okay. How else besides big thermometers on the wall, which I love, how else are you doing it? I love these ideas. Some of you who are tracking. Tammy and then Claire.
I keep an old school file folder beside me, and each month I have 3 file folders for sales, revenue, and receipts, and I go back into that. I put my monthly reconciliations in those. I put my profit and loss reports in there, and I can go back and I have one for every year behind me.
Love it. There's nothing wrong with old school. I love good old pen and paper file folders. I got some. You also mentioned previously 2 tools that I want to highlight. You talked about QuickBooks and you talked about a bookkeeper. Okay, and let's not just gloss over the fact that Tammy outsources some of this stuff. And I know some of you still haven't outsourced it, but you hate it. That's why you're not tracking, because you hate it. And so what do we do when we hate something? We just don't do it. And this, for some of us, hurts us, right? So if you're not a numbers person, maybe you need to consider, and there's bookkeepers in the Weekend community. Like you can post in the Weekend Facebook group. Does anyone know of a great bookkeeper? We have people that ask those types of questions all this time. Yeah, Joanne's like, I don't do math. It is my least favorite part of business as well. And usually we don't get into business because, woohoo, I want to track metrics. And that's not why. We do it because we want to help people do the thing that we do. Okay, so bookkeeper, QuickBooks, I want to flag those. Those are tools that we can use. Okay, other ways that people are tracking that might be helpful for others to hear. Claire, go ahead. Sorry, I forgot.
I have what I call my annual workflow. So I have 2 businesses. One is architectural design with a focus on sustainability and net zero. The other is as a nature and forest therapy guide. And so in order to be able to say yes or no to a new client coming in, or understand where what my time commitments look like, I have a pretty colors for each client, and it's basically how many hours I'm going to spend per month on each project, the total number of hours for each business, and then the hours equal my hourly rate. So then I also get a preview on what each month and the whole year is going to look like. And then I go in and I update it. Okay, these people, have decided they're not doing the cottage rebuild until next year. That's on hold. That's all deleted. But it gives me a really good glance. Like I can just open it up and go, oh, okay, November looks pretty dead. Geez, I need another project within the next few weeks. That's my new focus. Or if somebody else comes in and says, I've got a new project I want to run now, I can look and go, I can't, but I can in 3 weeks from now.
Right.
And so it's just I'm a very visual person, and I get lost in those details. So if I can map it out and see it in color, and then things become green or red, depending on whether or not I'm in a profit or loss for that particular project.
I love that. Erica has asked the question in the Zoom chat that we're all wondering, what is the tool you use for this colorful annual thing?
I mean, I'm a Mac-based person because that's where all the architectural software is. But so I use numbers, and it's just a very basic spreadsheet that has the formula for my hourly rate times the number of hours for each person. So it's very, very simple. It's clients, weeks or months, however detailed you want to break it down, hours and total, and then it adds up on that last column is my annual kind of preview. And I go in every time there's a big change. So every time a big decision comes up that's either, that changes that balance, I go in and check it.
Okay.
But I don't know, I'm sure Word has something similar.
Yeah, so I'm sure some are using Excel. I saw somebody was using Excel.
Excel, there you
Yeah.
go.
Okay, so just basically a numbers type of a program. Yeah, nothing fancy.
Yeah.
Although we know there are some project management systems out there that certainly you would pay for that are a little fancier. Cheyenne, I'm going to go over to you next though. How are you tracking your metrics?
So mine's a bit less of a tool. I use Google Docs for everything. I like to keep things simple. Numbers overwhelm me, and too much at once, it becomes just confusion. I can't see any systems or stories behind it. But for me, when I track, I think in terms of campaigns. Anytime I have a business goal, I design a marketing campaign to move towards that business goal. And then at the end of the campaign, I track the results so I can bring it back to the activities and how effective that was. And that really helps me create meaning within what I'm doing and really understand, like, this campaign brought this kind of metric and this campaign brought this, and I get a better sense of what's more effective and efficient for me.
I love it. Why I also love that is, and I tend to operate that way too. I think in projects or smaller, those things. And I think that's what Claire was alluding to a bit as well. And when you do that, let's say we have a project or a program that didn't go so well, we can sort of analyze that and tweak it for the next time. Because guys, I'm a big believer in rinse and repeat, right? That we don't have to come up with a new project every, 2 or 3 months or something like that. So I personally, I have a business obviously outside of Queens, as some of you know, and so I'm not always reinventing the wheel. I'm just sort of tweaking those major things that, back to our conversation, bring me joy, like the things I love to do. And, if that one didn't go as well, okay, why? Let's tweak that. Let's figure out. And again, pricing enters into this too, right? So that's the thing, tracking your pricing. Has your pricing changed in the last 3 years? Has it changed since you started your business? All of those things. It reminds us that there's different ways there's different levers that we can adjust to impact our profitability. And pricing is one too, tracking that. But I love Cheyenne. That makes a lot of sense, doing it by campaign. Okay, anyone else in terms of how you're tracking that might be helpful? And then we'll move into another type of question as well. Okay, go ahead, Nilu.
So I started my business for a long while, but before COVID and then after COVID, I was few months in India, back and forth. So I was stuck. So, but I'm just expressing first 6 years, I was tracking like in Excel.
Okay.
Okay, so what price I bought and what duties I mentioned, and then profit, and then I was just tracking end of every month, how much I earn. So it's a profit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, yeah. And I feel like customer satisfaction, because whenever I go and meet in the trade shows, because I participate in several trade shows, same repeated customer. What is your new product? And I always mention if there's any change, if you feel in my product, and they always mention, oh, we are looking for this kind of thing. So yes, so I always put those efforts as well. And before I just did the Excel, now I already moved on the Google Docs.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's really good for me. And yeah, this is me.
Okay.
And I think in the one stuck, I think vanity measure, I think I was there, and I'm still there because there's a lot of change in the product. So I'm just working on that, and end of this year, definitely I will show what exactly where I will be. So I think it's a lot of juggle, but yes, definitely I'm just learning, and
we all are. And here's the thing too, thanks for sharing that. I don't want people to walk away thinking, oh my gosh, I should be tracking 15 different things. I don't think that's the message here today. I would love for everyone to decide, what are the three? Let's say there's three main metrics. And maybe even now, as you're thinking about it, you can brainstorm that, or you know immediately. And you might even want to put in the Zoom chat. What if we were to start September 1st? We were start tracking the three most important, the three most important things to you and your business at this stage of business. What would those be? If you just want to share that in the Zoom chat as well, that would be interesting. While you're doing that, I just dropped an article into the Zoom chat as well that I found interesting, which is what I was alluding to about how we choose different metrics at different stages of business. Let me just open that. Oh, it's just kind of frozen, but I believe that's the one that I dropped in there. So that to me was interesting because Neelu was just talking about customer satisfaction, right? So very often, you know, that's the first thing we would measure. Like, what are our customers saying? What are they asking for? That helps us form our business. And then, like, you can't track revenues when you have no revenues, or profits when you have no profits. And let's be honest, that sometimes is 2 years into your business before you're making a profit. So what are the top three things? Oh, sorry, the question again, if you were just to say three things that are the most important for you to be tracking starting September 1st, what are the things that you're going to track? Because some of us get distracted by having 12 different things and we get overwhelmed, so we track nothing. Danny is saying numbers of customers a day, how much they spend, and which day of the week is busiest. Yeah, Danny has a bricks and mortar business. So people are coming into her soap company in Westport, I believe it is. So those are her three most important metrics. And if you're bricks and mortar, that might be something that for you. So Joanne says revenue, profit, subscribers, and maybe conversion would be her fourth. Yeah, Martha's saying leads, membership, retention. Cheyenne's saying one-on-one coaching clients, course membership, leads. Caro says profit, newsletter subscribers, her teams, happiness. Yes, so for those of you that have teams, I love that, Caro. It's not just about how happy are we, but what about the people we're hiring? That's an important profitability measure as well, because if we have to retrain all the time, that costs time and energy. Okay, I love that. When we do these, and some of you don't have to put it now. I want you to, that's your homework. That's maybe your thing to think about after this. What are the three things that I can, and I think we can all track at least three things, you know, no matter what stage of business. When we do, it allows us to not only learn the story from up to now, which I said, data tells a story, but it also helps us forecast, right? And I think Claire alluded to that. So what if Claire looks ahead to November and she's like, oh, there's no revenue coming in November. What's going to happen is that then tells her what she needs to do today. She needs to build a pipeline. She needs to get some client leads. She needs to reach out to some people who, as she said on her email list, have engaged but not converted. So that's her motivation. She's like, it's going to be a lean November if I'm not. So there she's forecasting, and the data is driving her action. If you see, so we can't forecast if we're not tracking, you know what I'm saying? So it's not just tracking what's happened, it's tracking almost like what's coming up. And I would suggest that one of the ways, so back to Martha at a new business, if she knows that last September was lean, maybe she knows she needs a campaign to get people in the door this September. So, you know, it helps us to inform our actions. Okay, I've got another quick little poll to ask you just so that you're awake, but also another way to ask questions. Let me go back here. My second poll is this: how often are you tracking your business metrics? Because I think that this is an interesting question, you know, to just reflect and see what is realistic. You know, I know there's a bunch of you on the call who are solopreneurs, right? So what is realistic in terms of our time commitment when it comes to tracking our metrics? And maybe some of you want to share as well, how often, oh, I have a furry friend joining me right here. How often you're doing that. Okay, so let me share. This is very interesting. I love this. So can you maybe Cheyenne, give me a thumbs up if you can see those results? Great. Nobody is on a weekly basis. So let's just let ourselves on the hook. It doesn't have to be daily or weekly, but monthly, I would say yes. Let's keep track of this. Annually, of course. And oh, some of you are saying all of the above. Some are saying none of the above. And those are the folks who have yet to track. So actually all of the above means some people are tracking weekly, my mistake. So that's interesting. In terms of my time, it's a monthly thing. And then of course an annual where you would compare, but that's something to think about. Let me ask this question next. How much time are you setting aside? And do you set it aside in your day, in your week, in your month? We don't set aside things in our year or it's not going to happen. That's the way I look at it. You know, in a realistic way, logistical way, how are you setting time aside to track, and how much time does it take you? Let's hear some real world experience here. It can be an estimate, obviously. Some of you though, you might know. Cheyenne.
Couple of us on the call, actually, we do a co-working session on Fridays. So it's a really good time to do like admin work. And that's been my time to sit down and look at my business and do kind of that stuff. Doesn't take me that long because I do work in terms of campaigns. So I know which campaign I have to wrap up and do my analytics for. So it's really only a couple hours a month, I'd say.
Great, 2 hours a month. Anyone else have a similar thing? Some people are like, how can I be a part of this co-working group? Just connect. This is why we connect in the Zoom chat. Find out a little bit more. What that is, basically, you're online, you're just, and you can do it in a physical way too. Like there are co-working spaces for sure. Tammy.
So my big one right now that I use is the QuickBooks Online. And because I have my bookkeeper, I basically have to just copy all my receipts and put them into her drive. So it's probably 2 hours a month to enter the information on my part, and then like 15 minutes to actually get the reports. If I didn't have the bookkeeper, it would probably be like 6 hours.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that's important to hear, is that for those who are overwhelmed by the time it's taking, maybe an outsource is necessary. And I know Tammy and I have had this conversation before, but sometimes we think, oh, but I can't afford to pay a bookkeeper. But like if Tammy gets 4 hours a month back of her time and she can then bring in new revenue, does that not make sense that she's operating in her zone of genius rather than as a technician, as we've heard before from books like the E-Myth, right? So that's why sometimes that's important. Anyone else? So we've heard a couple of hours. And again, that's with a bookkeeper, right? So it would definitely take 6 hours. I would say that's very realistic. Does anybody have like time? Well, we heard from Cheyenne, it was per week, that it's like in your schedule to do tracking. Erin's saying it takes her a few hours a month. Yep. And she does go deep. I know that. So uses her, she's forecast as a financial planning, depending on how deep you're going into that, for sure. Again, a bookkeeper can also give you some of that information. And someone mentioned an accountant, which is, I'm going to say, sort of that next deeper level A bookkeeper sometimes doesn't do all of that. They might just give you the data. They might not interpret the data. An accountant will often do that. But Tammy, over to you. What are your thoughts?
I was going to say that I actually have it programmed in my phone every Sunday at 9 a.m., which I'm free. I get a bell that says upload your receipts.
Wow.
And if I don't have that, I don't do it.
Okay. Love it. Put it in the calendar, set an alarm, all of those things. Yeah. Claire is saying a few hours a month between invoices, QuickBooks review, follow-up, and forecasting. Yeah. And again, I think the message, if that's overwhelming to someone, maybe even just do an inquiry call with a bookkeeper. Like, you can do information calls, right? And just find out, what would it be? Like, what could you do for me? What would the price be? And sometimes that's the on-ramp into some of this financial freedom things or time freedom, right? Okay, love that. So that's just in terms of time and tracking, because I think it's a real thing. I think most of us can afford 2 hours a month if we think about it that way, especially if it equips us to be a little more prepared in our business. Okay, want to open up some questions. I think those are the major ones. We've got about 10 minutes left. And now I know some of you have questions for others in the group. So go ahead, put your hand up if you have a question about this topic today of metrics, tracking, or you can put in the Zoom chat and I'm happy to ask that. It could be, what do you guys do for this? Or, maybe it's just a question in general. Claire, question.
More specific to leads. You said a term that I hadn't heard before, which was warm lead. When you were talking about people engaging through that monthly newsletter that I send out. I think for me, it's trying to find that sweet spot between making sure that I'm staying engaged with the people that want to hear from me and want to engage, and that kind of icky feeling of like, am I pushing too much? Am I being like that creepy person that just reaches out too often? I don't know. Like, that's, how do you determine that?
All right, great question. Let's throw that out. I call that nurturing my audience. Again, I don't call it bugging them. I'm I'm nurturing the audience, because if they want to unsubscribe, they will unsubscribe. But like, I think that they have, yeah, but there is a good question about how much is too much. So let's throw that question out to the group. How much time would you?
So I get, and what I'm guessing, I'm not being specific enough, but like those warm leads or the people who seem to be interested, those personal emails that you then send, or personal phone calls that you then send to follow up on what you feel is a lead. How much is too much, or what would be acceptable? Yeah.
Okay, let me throw that out to the group. Anybody have a thought on that? How much is too much? What's the perfect number of times is what we're asking. And I'm just going to say probably there is no
I think
answer.
that's such a subjective answer, as long as you don't get the ick feeling, like, as Cheyenne used that term earlier. It's subjective. It depends on the client. It depends on what you're selling.
Okay, Cheyenne, yeah, over to you.
This is my wheelhouse. Provide value. If you stay top of mind and you have a reminder that you offer this thing, but you are providing value in your content, it helps to neutralize that ick. They still have you in the back of their mind, but then they're getting something additional out of you. And the reason they might not be moving into conversion might be that they need more information. Like, there might be a piece that you can build into that sequence, into that marketing and that content, that will give them just that extra little piece they need. And either way, as long as you're genuinely providing value, you're not going to be self-promotional. It's not going to be icky. It's going to continue to nurture the relationship rather than detract from it.
Great point. Adding value. And I think there's a difference here when we're talking about email subscribers, because they generally do get our emails, versus social media. Because in my business, and then this will scare some people, but I post 3 times a day generally. I batch content and I release it because I know that people will not see it. Like, literally someone will be like, oh, you have an event this month? I'm like, oh my God, like I thought I was over, because the algorithm does not show it. So it's like showing up there, you almost can never do it too much, because it doesn't show it, and the algorithm likes it the more that you share. But email is different, obviously. And so I used to do once a week email updates. adding value, not always selling for sure. And now I actually do it once a month because of time, but then I might have a special edition, I call it, right? Which is when I'm selling something actively, which I did this month. So, and the other thing I just want to add is that when you tag, like MailChimp you mentioned, when you tag your audiences, right? So you kind of target them. So these people, so maybe you have like a forest walk, right? And that's in person. Maybe there are people on your email list who live in Singapore and they just want to hear about like your online stuff. So then you can make a note that, oh, these are my online subscribers, these are my local subscribers. So you're not going to necessarily flood the people in Singapore with your local nature walk. So when you have them tagged, they actually don't get that email because it's not relevant to them. So I would say use MailChimp in that way to maybe, what do they call that? Tagging, I believe that's what it's called. Labeling, something like that. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Okay, I love that. Good question. Segment. Thank you, Karu. Yes, brilliant. Anyone else with a question around this business metrics? I know our time goes quick when we have these 1 hour sessions. There's a burning question and I have to go to the Zoom chat in case I've missed something. Yeah, that's so true. Any other questions? I don't see if somebody wants to put in the Zoom chat. And if I missed one, just repeat it or put your hand up. Sorry about that. I'm trying to monitor both. Yeah, go ahead, Deanne.
Hi, sorry, it's not a question. I'll make it quick. It is an observation, though, through everything that I've heard. Having been with the Big Four all of my career and now out on our own, the transition from old school to what is happening in the market today is I would never have been as tenacious and aggressive and back then as you have to be right now. I've got it in my, just as Tammy said, her little bell goes off on a Sunday morning. I've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for posting social media. That is just one small sliver of my role. And I don't put enough emphasis on it. But to your point of the whole SEO, it probably is vanity, to see how many are following you, instead of the focus being on the leads. I did like the newsletter thing. So I do a newsletter once a quarter for our investors. But I like the idea of creating one, perhaps through MailChimp, I don't know, to go out to all the connections that we've made through events and so forth, to give them updates, not from an investor perspective, but updates on the software that we've done, or a recent addition to the products that we've got. Is that something that would resonate with people?
Yeah, and just as you're saying that, what that reminds me of is, first of all, you're being top of mind, right? When we show up, let's say on a monthly basis minimum, it's reminding people, oh yeah, Deanne does that thing. And maybe they're not even the target market, but they know people who could benefit from what you were
Always
selling,
believe
right?
somebody knows somebody.
Absolutely. So then in that case, I have seen companies, sometimes they don't even create their own original content, they curate. So here's a great book, here's a great video, here's a great article. So when they open that newsletter, they know that if they're interested in XYZ topic, blockchain, let's say in your case, that they're going to get valuable monthly, an article. And by the way, you'll probably mention what project you're working on. You might also include a client testimonial, or, so I find even sharing that type of information can be helpful in a newsletter. But anyone else thoughts on that? I'll just check the Zoom chat. Thoughts on
it feels, yeah, it feels really aligned with what we're talking about with staying engaged and supporting our core audience. It feels supportive. Yeah.
And I like to ask the question, am I nurturing this audience? How am I adding value, what Cheyenne mentioned? And when we think of it in those terms, like, if we're excited about the thing we do, that's contagious. And we know that sales is just the transfer of enthusiasm, right? So like if I'm showing up every month, not because I have to, because I love what I do, I love talking about the thing, I suddenly become, in your case, if I'm a blockchain, I'm the blockchain go-to girl, right? Or company. And so when people are talking about like, oh, you need to talk to Diane. Are you following Diane on LinkedIn? Here's a great newsletter if you're interested in blockchain, right? So Tammy, over to you, and then Cheyenne. And then I know that we're in the last 5 minutes because my bell just buzzed.
Thanks. I'll try and make it quick because I have a tendency to make a short story long. But I totally agree with what Claire's been talking about. And for me, it's just getting it out there. Because if you set the alarm and you say, okay, even once a month, you're putting it out into the world. Cheyenne and I had a conversation the other week, and I attribute a lot of my success through my whole life, and all of my accomplishments through the generosity of others. I have had some amazing people who have helped me for no particular reason. Like, it wasn't that I had particularly asked, but through the generosity of others. I heard a story last night from Carol Burnett, I love Carol Burnett. There's two people. One person who gave her actually her tuition to go to school. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gone to school. And then there was another person who just randomly gave her the money to go to New York, in which she started her Carol Burnett show. That would never have happened if it were not through the generosity of others. And it started because she manifested it and put it out there. I know it's kind of woo-woo and not, but if you don't start it, it won't happen if you don't take the first step.
I love that. That's a very good reminder. I believe that too. Someone was asking about the Facebook group. There it is in the chat. Cheyenne, I think, oh, we got it there twice. Cheyenne, I think you had a question or a comment?
Just a comment about Vanity Metrics. Just really taking into account sometimes social media followers is a legitimate metric. It's about tying it to your business goal. Because if you're creating a good group of social media followers, and then your next campaign, your next goal is going to be to harvest that into your email list or into a conversion, it is a legitimate metric. It's just about thinking about it in steps and what are you going to use them for and what are you going to do with them, and are they good quality followers on your social media?
Yeah, and that's a great loop to just close, because I'd mentioned I post 3 times on Instagram. The reason, because that's where my audience is. Small business, women who own small businesses in my region show up to my monthly networking events. So it's a direct correlation. But that's why I do spend the time there. But others might be LinkedIn. Others, it might be their newsletter, or they have a podcast, like whatever it is. And if you're a weekend client, by the way, you're in the Kingston or the Quinte region, I do that one-on-one coaching with people to help them focus that in. So these calls are amazing and they're good for sparking ideas. But if you get off this call and you're like, what now? First of all, we have masterminds, which are launching next week. I just want to put a plug. If you're not already on our weekly newsletter, that applications will be coming. We do give priority to women who have never been in a mastermind before. So if you haven't, go ahead and do that. Thanks, Cheyenne. And then that one-on-one coaching is also available. If you're a weekend client, it's absolutely free, along with our masterminds and these types of workshops. So the eligibility is you simply have to be a woman identifying entrepreneur in the greater Kingston or Quinte region. And many of the women on this call are coaching clients, are masterminders, all of those things. So this is one of those portals, but it's just starting. Okay, so sadly, we are out of time. I hope that today, though, has given you a little homework. If nothing else, I want you to think of 3 things that you're going to start tracking in your business. If you have to make it 1, start with 1, maybe move to 3 by January. Start with, 1 to 3. Let's put it that way. Because if we're not tracking, we can't improve. And if we can't improve, we can't grow. And a year from now, I want to know that you guys are all still in business, you're flourishing and thriving, and this is a part of doing our business. All right, so I hope that you've gotten some value from today. Thank you so much for investing in yourself and your business, taking some time to do that today. It's been a wonderful hour. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your August. We will see you again in September. Take care, folks. Thanks.